Hey there, history buffs and conspiracy theory enthusiasts. Let's be real, we've all sat through those history classes where the textbook felt heavier than a bag of potatoes, right? And don't even get me started on those monotone lectures that seem to drag on for centuries. But what if I told you that history is less about memorizing dates and more like a choose-your-own-adventure novel? Yeah, you heard me right. Because behind those famous names and big events are stories often untold, whispers in the corridors of the past waiting to be uncovered. And that's what we're here to do today, to unearth the lesser-known details, the alternative perspectives, the stuff they don't always put in textbooks. We're talking about the juicy bits, the plot twists, the what? Moments that'll make you see these historical happenings in a whole new light. So buckle up, because we're about to embark on a wild ride through 10 historical events that'll have you questioning everything you thought you knew. This is at Enchant Minds, and get ready to have your minds blown. Support at Enchant Minds by following us on social media and subscribing to our channel for more fascinating historical stories. Alright, let's kick things off with one of the most infamous nights in American history, April 14, 1865. Picture this: Ford's Theater, a night out for President Lincoln and his wife. The Civil War had just ended, a sense of relief palpable in the air. But as Lincoln settled into his seat to enjoy the play, a shot rang out, echoing through the stunned silence of the theater. John Wilkes Booth, a famous actor and Confederate sympathizer, had shot the president in the back of the head. Now everyone knows Booth pulled the trigger, right? That's History 101. But here's where things get interesting, because some historians believe Booth wasn't a lone wolf. Instead, they argue he was part of a much bigger, more sinister plot. A conspiracy, if you will, that stretched far beyond a single disgruntled actor, implicating high-ranking Confederate officials and changing our understanding of that fateful night. Okay, let's jump back a few centuries now to 1692 to a small, tightly knit community in colonial Massachusetts, Salem. Imagine a place where religion was as essential as oxygen, where fear of the devil lurked in every shadow. It all started innocently enough, with a group of young girls exhibiting strange behavior fits, contortions, and outbursts of gibberish. These girls, starved for attention in a world that often ignored their voices, became the epicenter of something much larger, much darker. Doctors, stumped by the girls' ailments, offered a chilling diagnosis: witchcraft. And just like that, a spark ignited a wildfire of paranoia and suspicion that would consume Salem. But were these girls really possessed by demonic forces, or was there something else at play? Something more human, more sinister? Buckle up, because as we delve into the Salem witch trials, we'll uncover a tale of power, manipulation, and the dark side of Puritan society. Okay, so you've probably heard the phrase "Rome wasn't built in a day." This saying has been used countless times to remind us that great things take time to achieve. The Roman Empire, with its grand architecture, vast territories, and sophisticated society, is a testament to this truth. From the majestic Colosseum to the intricate aqueducts, every stone laid and every road paved was a result of meticulous planning and hard work over centuries. Well, it turns out, Rome wasn't destroyed in a day either. The decline of this mighty empire was a slow and painful process, stretching over centuries. It wasn't a single catastrophic event that brought Rome to its knees, but a series of unfortunate events and gradual decay. Imagine a grand old tree, once towering and majestic, slowly withering away due to disease, pests, and neglect. The fall of the Roman Empire. It wasn't some dramatic singular event like a volcanic eruption vaporizing Pompeii. Instead, it was a prolonged period of decline, marked by numerous battles, internal strife, and external pressures. The empire faced challenges on multiple fronts, from economic troubles to political instability, and from military defeats to social upheavals. We're talking centuries of slow decline, kind of like that band you used to love that just kept putting out progressively worse albums. Each new release was a shadow of its former glory, and eventually, you stopped listening altogether. Similarly, the Roman Empire, once the epitome of power and culture, gradually lost its luster. The grandeur of Rome faded, and what remained were ruins and memories of a bygone era. Except instead of bad music, imagine economic instability, political corruption, and the constant threat of barbarian invasions. The empire's economy was in shambles, with rampant inflation and a devalued currency. Corruption was rife, with officials more interested in their own gain than the welfare of the state. And then there were the barbarians, relentless and ever-pressing at the borders, eager to carve out their own piece of the empire. It's like trying to juggle flaming chainsaws while riding a unicycle on a tightrope. The Roman leaders were constantly trying to balance multiple crises, each one more dangerous than the last. They had to deal with internal rebellions, external threats, and a crumbling infrastructure. It was a precarious situation, and one wrong move could spell disaster. Eventually, something's gotta give, right? And give it did. The once mighty Roman Empire, which had stood the test of time for centuries, began to crumble. The cracks in its foundation grew wider, and the weight of its problems became too much to bear. The empire that had once been the beacon of civilization was now a shadow of its former self. The Roman Empire, once this vast, seemingly unstoppable force, started to crumble. Its territories, which had stretched from the British Isles to the sands of Egypt, began to shrink. The legions, once invincible, were now struggling to hold the line. The cities once bustling with life and commerce were now ghost towns, their streets empty and their buildings in ruins. But here's the thing, historians still argue about exactly what caused the fall. Was it a single catastrophic event, or a series of unfortunate events? Was it internal decay, or external pressures? The debate rages on, with scholars poring over ancient texts and archaeological evidence, each one trying to piece together the puzzle of Rome's decline. Was it the lead pipes poisoning the water supply? Some historians believe that the widespread use of lead pipes in Roman plumbing systems led to chronic lead poisoning, which weakened the population and contributed to the empire's decline. The once pristine aqueducts, which had brought fresh water to the cities, were now conduits of poison. The barbarians at the gates? The relentless pressure from barbarian tribes such as the Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns was a constant threat. These tribes, driven by their own needs and ambitions, saw the weakening Roman Empire as an opportunity. They launched raids, sacked cities, and eventually carved out their own kingdoms from the remnants of Rome. The sheer size and unwieldiness of the empire itself, the Roman Empire had grown so vast that it became increasingly difficult to manage. The logistics of governing such a large territory, with its diverse cultures and languages, were daunting. Communication was slow, and decisions made in Rome often took months to reach the far-flung provinces. The administrative machinery, once efficient, was now bogged down by bureaucracy and inefficiency. The truth is, there's no single answer. The fall of the Roman Empire was a complex process, influenced by a multitude of factors. It was a perfect storm of internal weaknesses and external pressures, each one exacerbating the other. The empire's decline was not the result of a single cause, but a combination of many. It's more like a complex tapestry woven from multiple threads of political intrigue, economic hardship, and maybe even a dash of climate change for good measure. The political landscape of Rome was fraught with power struggles, assassinations, and coups. The economy was in a state of perpetual crisis, with heavy taxation and a declining workforce. And then there were the environmental factors, such as changing climate patterns, which affected agriculture and food supply. It's enough to make your head spin faster than a chariot race through the Circus Maximus. The decline of the Roman Empire is a story of complexity and nuance, a tale of a great civilization brought low by a multitude of factors. It's a reminder that even the mightiest empires are not immune to the forces of history, and that the rise and fall of civilizations is a natural part of the human experience. Alright, let's talk about the French Revolution. You know the basics. Storming of the Bastille, Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake, which she probably never even said. It's a story full of drama, intrigue, and enough beheadings to make even the most jaded horror movie fan squirm. But what often gets lost in the shuffle of guillotines and revolutionary fervor is the role of women. See, the French Revolution wasn't just about men in powdered wigs debating philosophy and chopping off heads. It was about a society on the brink of collapse, a system so unequal that even the rats seemed to be plotting rebellion. And women, they were right there on the front lines demanding change. They weren't just passive observers in this revolution, they were active participants, risking their necks right alongside the men. They marched, they protested, they even formed their own revolutionary societies because, hey, who needs permission to fight for equality? Alright, let's talk about the American Civil War, a time of division, bloodshed, and ultimately a fight for freedom. We've all heard the stories of Abraham Lincoln, the Emancipation Proclamation, the battles of Gettysburg and Antietam. But beneath the surface of those well-known narratives lies another story, a secret network of courage, compassion, and resistance known as the Underground Railroad. Now, this wasn't your typical railroad with trains and conductors. Imagine instead a hidden web of safe houses, secret routes, and brave individuals risking everything to help enslaved people escape to freedom. It was a clandestine operation shrouded in secrecy, where whispers could mean the difference between life and death. And while Harriet Tubman, the Moses of her people, is often hailed as the face of the Underground Railroad, the truth is, it was a collective effort, a testament to the bravery and resilience of countless individuals, both black and white, who refused to turn a blind eye to injustice. World War II, a global conflict of unprecedented scale, where technology played a pivotal role in shaping the course of the war. The world had never seen such widespread devastation and innovation happening simultaneously. Nations were locked in a deadly race, not just for territorial gains but for technological supremacy. The stakes were higher than ever, and the outcome of the war hinged on who could outsmart whom in this deadly game of wits and machinery. From tanks and airplanes to radar and submarines, both sides constantly sought an edge. The battlefield was no longer just on land or sea, it extended into the realms of the unseen, where invisible waves of communication and detection played a crucial role. Radar systems could detect incoming enemy aircraft, submarines could silently stalk their prey beneath the waves, and tanks could roll across the battlefield with devastating firepower. Each innovation brought new strategies and counter-strategies, making the war a complex and multifaceted conflict. But perhaps no technological advantage was as significant, yet as shrouded in secrecy, as the Enigma machine. This device, with its seemingly magical ability to encode messages, was a marvel of engineering and cryptography. It was the brainchild of German ingenuity, designed to keep their military communications secure from prying eyes. The Enigma machine was not just a tool, it was a symbol of German technological prowess and their confidence in their ability to maintain the upper hand in the war. Used by the German military to encrypt their communications, the Enigma machine was considered unbreakable. Its use was widespread, from the highest levels of command to the front lines of battle. Every message, whether it was a routine supply order or a critical strategic directive, was encoded using this machine. The Germans believed that their encrypted messages were safe from Allied interception, giving them a sense of invulnerability and the freedom to plan and execute their operations with confidence. Its complexity, with its rotating wheels and seemingly endless combinations, posed a daunting challenge to Allied codebreakers. The Enigma machine's design was both elegant and formidable. It featured a series of rotating wheels, each with 26 positions, which could be set in countless configurations. The machine's internal wiring further scrambled the letters, creating a code that was virtually impossible to break without knowing the exact settings. This level of complexity meant that even if the Allies intercepted a message, deciphering it was another matter entirely. Imagine, if you will, a typewriter hooked up to a series of intricate, scrambling devices. Each key press would send an electrical signal through the machine's rotors, transforming the input letter into a different output letter. The result was a seemingly random string of characters that only the intended recipient with the correct settings could decode. This ingenious design made the Enigma machine a formidable tool of war, one that seemed to place the Germans at an insurmountable advantage. Each time you type a letter, it gets transformed into a completely different one, based on a setting known only to the sender and receiver. The machine's settings were changed daily, adding another layer of security. This meant that even if the Allies managed to crack the code one day, they would have to start from scratch the next. The Enigma machine's ability to generate such a high level of encryption made it a cornerstone of German military strategy. Now imagine trying to decipher a message encoded with this machine without knowing the initial settings. The task seemed Herculean, akin to finding a needle in a haystack. The Allied codebreakers faced a monumental challenge, one that required not just intelligence and perseverance, but also a deep understanding of mathematics and engineering. The odds were stacked against them, but the stakes were too high to give up. It seemed like an impossible task, a puzzle with millions of potential solutions. The codebreakers had to sift through an ocean of possibilities, using every tool and technique at their disposal. They employed advanced mathematical theories, cutting-edge technology, and sheer determination in their quest to break the Enigma code. Each breakthrough, no matter how small, brought them one step closer to their goal. The Germans were confident in their encryption. They believed that the Enigma machine was their ace in the hole, a device that would keep their secrets safe and their enemies in the dark. This confidence was not unfounded. The Enigma machine was a masterpiece of cryptographic engineering, and its codes had remained unbroken for years. The Germans continued to rely on it, unaware of the silent battle being waged against their encryption. They believed that the Enigma code provided them with an impenetrable veil of secrecy, allowing them to communicate freely and coordinate their military operations without fear of interception. This sense of security enabled them to plan bold and complex operations, confident that their plans would remain hidden from the Allies. The Enigma machine was more than just a tool. It was a key element of their strategic advantage. Little did they know that a team of brilliant minds at Bletchley Park, a secret British intelligence facility, were working tirelessly to crack the uncrackable. These codebreakers, a diverse group of mathematicians, linguists, and engineers, were united by a common goal: to break the Enigma code and turn the tide of the war. Their work was shrouded in secrecy, and their successes and failures were known only to a select few. The stakes were incredibly high, as every intercepted and deciphered message could potentially save countless lives and turn the tide of the war. The codebreakers knew that their work could mean the difference between victory and defeat. Each decoded message provided valuable intelligence, revealing enemy plans and movements. This information was crucial for the Allied forces, allowing them to anticipate and counter German operations. The battle to break the Enigma code was a race against time, with the fate of the world hanging in the balance. The Spanish Inquisition. Even the name conjures up images of shadowy figures, torture chambers, and public burnings. It's become synonymous with religious persecution, a dark chapter in European history. But the Spanish Inquisition was more than just a brutal campaign against heresy. It was a complex institution, driven by a combination of religious zeal, political ambition, and social control. Established in the late 15th century, the Spanish Inquisition was initially intended to root out converts from Judaism and Islam who were suspected of secretly practicing their former faiths. It was a time of religious fervor following the Reconquista, the centuries-long struggle to expel Muslim rule from Spain. The Catholic monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella, sought to create a religiously homogeneous society, and the Inquisition became a tool to achieve that goal. The Inquisition operated on the principle of secrecy and suspicion. Accusations could be made anonymously, often based on rumors or personal vendettas. Those accused were subjected to terrifying interrogations, often under duress, and forced to confess their alleged crimes against the faith. The methods used were brutal, designed to elicit confessions and instill fear in the population. October 1962. The world stood on the precipice of an unprecedented crisis, one that would test the resolve and nerves of leaders and citizens alike. The world watches with bated breath as the United States and the Soviet Union teeter on the brink of nuclear war. Every news broadcast, every newspaper headline, and every whispered conversation carried the weight of potential annihilation. This wasn't a hypothetical scenario, a distant threat lurking in the background. This was it. The tension was palpable, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. Families huddled around their television sets, watching the unfolding drama with a mix of fear and hope. The Cuban Missile Crisis, 13 days that shook the world and forever changed the course of the Cold War. It was a confrontation that brought humanity to the edge of the abyss, a moment when the future of civilization hung in the balance. The crisis began quietly, with grainy aerial photographs revealing the unthinkable: Soviet nuclear missiles stationed on the island of Cuba, just 90 miles off the coast of Florida. These images, captured by U.S. reconnaissance planes, were the first undeniable proof of the Soviet Union's bold move. Soviet nuclear missiles stationed on the island of Cuba, just 90 miles off the coast of Florida. The proximity of these weapons to American soil was a game-changer, a direct challenge to U.S. national security and a stark reminder of the ever-present threat of nuclear war. These weren't just any missiles, they were capable of striking major American cities from Washington, D.C. to New York and beyond. The realization that these weapons could reach the heart of the United States within minutes was a chilling thought. And they were armed with nuclear warheads. The destructive power of these warheads was beyond comprehension, capable of leveling entire cities and causing untold human suffering. The discovery sent shockwaves through the American government. President John F. Kennedy and his advisors were faced with an unprecedented challenge, one that required careful deliberation and swift action, and plunged the world into a state of unprecedented tension. The fear of nuclear war was no longer an abstract concept. It was a real and immediate threat that loomed over every aspect of daily life. The Cold War, a decades-long ideological and geopolitical struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union, had reached a fever pitch. The two superpowers were locked in a battle for global supremacy, each determined to outmaneuver the other, had reached a fever pitch. The arms race had escalated to a dangerous level, with both sides amassing vast arsenals of nuclear weapons. The world watched as the two giants squared off, each move scrutinized and analyzed for signs of weakness or aggression. Both superpowers possessed nuclear arsenals capable of unimaginable destruction, enough to obliterate the planet several times over. The concept of mutually assured destruction, or MAD, was a grim reality that kept both sides in check. And the threat of mutually assured destruction hung over the world like a dark cloud. Civil defense drills became a part of everyday life, with children practicing duck-and-cover drills in schools and families building fallout shelters in their backyards. But the presence of Soviet missiles in Cuba changed the game, shifting the balance of power and creating an unacceptable risk for the United States. The US government had to respond, and quickly, to this new and immediate threat, shifting the balance of power and creating an unacceptable risk for the United States. President Kennedy addressed the nation, outlining the gravity of the situation and the steps the US would take to counter the threat. A naval blockade, or quarantine, was established around Cuba to prevent further Soviet shipments of military equipment. The world held its breath as US naval ships enforced the blockade, intercepting Soviet vessels and demanding they turn back. The tension was palpable, with the fate of the world hanging in the balance. Behind the scenes, intense negotiations were underway. Diplomats from both sides worked tirelessly to find a peaceful resolution, aware that any misstep could lead to catastrophic consequences. Finally, after days of high-stakes diplomacy, a deal was reached. Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev agreed to remove the missiles from Cuba in exchange for a US pledge not to invade the island and the secret removal of American missiles from Turkey. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief as the crisis was diffused. The Cuban Missile Crisis had brought humanity to the brink of nuclear war, but it also demonstrated the power of diplomacy and the importance of communication in averting disaster. The lessons learned from those 13 days would shape the course of the Cold War and influence international relations for decades to come. The Cuban Missile Crisis remains a stark reminder of the dangers of nuclear brinkmanship and the need for vigilance in the pursuit of peace. Today, the world continues to grapple with the legacy of the Cold War and the ongoing threat of nuclear proliferation. The Cuban Missile Crisis serves as a powerful testament to the importance of diplomacy, dialogue, and the relentless pursuit of a safer, more secure world for future generations. Okay, so we've all heard of the Black Death, right? It's like History 101, Europe, 14th century buboes, oh my, millions dead. End of story, except not really. See, the Black Death, beyond its horrific death toll, completely reshaped medieval society. Imagine a world where suddenly a third of your town is gone, your priest, your baker, your best friend's family, gone. The impact was devastating, but it also forced some really profound changes. For centuries, Europe had operated under a rigid feudal system, but with so many dead, the demand for labor skyrocketed. Peasants, once bound to the land, suddenly had bargaining power. They could demand higher wages, even move to find better opportunities. This shift in power dynamics, fueled by unimaginable tragedy, planted the seeds of change. It challenged the very fabric of medieval society, contributing to the decline of feudalism and the rise of a new social and economic order. When we think of the Aztecs, we often picture fierce warriors and bloody sacrifices, right? And while those aspects of Aztec culture certainly existed, they don't tell the whole story. Not even close. The Aztec Empire, centered in the magnificent city of Tenochtitlan, was a complex and sophisticated civilization. I mean, imagine a city built on a lake with canals for streets, bustling marketplaces, and towering pyramids dedicated to their gods. That was Tenochtitlan. But beyond the grandeur and military prowess, there's another side to the Aztecs that often gets overlooked: the role of women. Now I know what you're thinking. Ancient civilizations, patriarchy, the usual story. But the Aztecs, they were different. Their society, while still patriarchal in many ways, afforded women a surprising degree of power and influence. From the Black Death's societal transformation to the often overlooked power of women in the Aztec Empire, we've journeyed through some of history's most fascinating untold stories. But our exploration doesn't have to end here. Dive deeper into these topics with the resources linked below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more mind-blowing history lessons.